Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Radiant Black podcast. This is a show where friends sit down and chat about the Radiant Black series and the MassiveVerse. Radiant Black, of course, by Kyle Higgins and Marcelo Costa. Today, I'm your host, Bash, and I'm joined by my friends and my hosts, Ali and Matt. But we're also joined again, once more, by a special guest. You may know him as curator of MassiveVerse Central. We actually know him as the two-time Radiant Black trivia champion, world champion. Owen Seiler. How you doing, Owen?
I'm doing good. And also, don't forget the so far one-time champion of Rogue Sun trivia as well.
Right.
I'm saving that for another episode of Rogue Sun.
Okay. Well, I just figured it was worth mentioning just in case.
We gotta give people a chance here. We gotta give them some motivation to show up to the next competition. But
I am going to say this now live on the air, so that way, like, if I try and pull back on this or whatever, I can be held accountable. For the next Radiant Black, Rogue Sun trivia, whatever thing, I'm going to be pulling out so that way because I want somebody else besides me to win because I've had enough of me and I'm me.
Damn.
Well, that's totally not fair.
Yes. Thank you, Will Fidel, as Radiant Black. I appreciate that.
So
you heard it here
guys,
first,
there
we'll
you
do like
go.
a Masters, like a separate bracket there when someone reaches your status, and then we'll have like the legendary trivia with the really greasy questions.
Oh man, all winners.
You'll win
How
a
many
Radiant,
pages is Radiant Black total? Yeah. Something like that.
Oh my, that would be horrible.
I don't want to count
the whole thing will just be done in Radiant language. Like he'll just have to roll with it. It's just translating. But no, guys, we're very excited today because we're going to talk about something awesome, and that thing is this. It's the Radiant Black 28 and 28.5. Don't worry, we'll get Owen back. There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go. So 28, 28.5. Let's talk about the creative teams before we dive right into this. We've got massive creative team because, as you know, the Catalyst War has diverging timelines with, the 0.5 of each issue being an issue that explores the other timeline. So they're not just variants. They're actually two completely different stories, which are all part of the same story, which is Catalyst War. So for 28, I'll tell you who we've got for both, and then we'll do 28 and then 28.5. But we're going to talk about it all together. So for 28, we've got why don't I have this one? Here, 1 second. But yeah, no, I got open. It's just I don't know why it wasn't open. But yeah, here 28, we've got Kyle Higgins and Joe Clark being the writing team. So Joe Clark is co-writing the event with Kyle Higgins. They've done a wonderful job. Got Eduardo Ferigato on inks and Raul Angelo on colors, as well as Becca Carey, of course, on letters. So that's for 28. And then for 28.5, we've got Kyle Higgins and Joe Clark as the creative writing team. We've got the incredible Marcelo Costa, aka co-creator of Radiant Black, as the artist. And we've got Rod Fernandes on colors and the amazing Becca Carey on letters. So guys, let's start through. Let me pull up the covers here.
So recap, last time we lost Nathan in timeline A, which was brutal, shocking, that's a big deal. It only happens a few issues every time, every 10, 20 issues.
It's only the second time it's ever happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. And on the other side, things are going better, right? It's hard to keep these in line for us. This is the biggest challenge in us for podcasting, really, is trying to keep these steady. So Nathan died last time, and the other timeline, it's going better. If you guys want to help fill it in, I've got a dime here.
Yeah, I mean, he managed to save Marshall.
Yeah. From the HR Geiger kind of contraption there that we saw. So yeah, that was great. And now we get the aftermath of that. Plus, we got a sponsor.
Real quick, we got a sponsor, Comic Nation US. Guys, we know some of our listeners and just people in the comic book community, they don't live next to a comic book shop. I feel for you. Luckily, we've got Comic Nation US available in Canada, I believe in the UK, as well as, of course, the USA. Just a fantastic service overall. You can pre-order all your books. You already get 15% off on pre-orders. And if you use code Radiant Black Podcast, you get an extra 5% off for a total of 20% off. Make sure you're pre-ordering your books, staying on top of that. And make sure you check out the world's finest comic book shop. So we've got, this is the cover to Radiant Black 28. It's part 6 of the Catalyst War. As you can see, it's the connecting cover, which we have in the background I showed earlier in the stream. This is the left half, and the right half has Premiere on the cover. Very exciting stuff. we'll dive into it. And as you can see, I'll leave this page up while we talk. But the beginning of Radiant Black 28, a lot is happening. We see that it picks up immediately. So I gotta. You know what? I gotta get my reference. So you guys can look at the pretty 28.5 in the meantime. So yes, I do of course pick up everything today. So yeah, we start off with picking up from last issue. As we know, the third door is just around the corner. The third door being the third trial. So we see the ships coming up, and we see this was such a cool scene. We see 001 wearing his cape, sneaking on board, and we don't know why yet. But as we see when he sneaks on board, there's just all these people being healed in these chambers or these tanks, and those are the priests from last issue that that were held up in the second trial. So that's where we see this panel here, and this guy is George. He was the guy who was leading the charge with the second trial. So if you remember that big panel we saw when we were doing our last review, the guy in the middle with the hammer, that's George. And apparently he's the guy who kind of maybe designed or took the point lead on this.
He's the George
trial.
in charge. Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So what do you guys think? First of all, what do you guys think? Like, amazing stuff here. Kind of brutal. I was surprised.
What I thought is, I think this whole war and all these challenges could have been a lot easier if we knew that 001 can just sneak on the ship this easily. Like, he could have at least brought Radiant Black with him, right?
Well,
making me question his loyalties a little bit.
He's like influencing things behind the shadows, right? Like, he's been giving the intel, and really, like, Nathan died last issue because of the rebellion of the other female member of this crew, right? So like that was really interesting to me, is in like, it wasn't really a Nathan or Marshall thing that resulted in his death. It was which one of these people rebelled. Yeah. So I thought that was a really interesting element. It wasn't necessarily a failure of Nathan or of Marshall to save Nathan so much as it was who rebelled in what timeline.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting.
I also think it's very fascinating.
Oh, and I just want to see who'd you vote for first before you get your point here.
Yeah, I've asked this question numerous times to many other people, so it makes sense that the tables are turned on me. So, like, I know that. So for those who don't listen to the podcast like I do, everybody here, Charlie, who unfortunately couldn't make it, everybody here voted for Marshall as Radiant Black, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
However, on the other hand, I voted for Nathan.
Nice.
I know. Shocker, but I should also mention the fact that I voted for Marshall on a separate Gmail account, so I just canceled that vote out anyway. So it really, I'm like Mac from It's Always Sunny, where it's like I play both sides, so no matter who comes out on top, I always come out on top.
Right.
I agree with that. I like that a lot, actually. I'm glad you said that. You're the only person who's been pragmatic enough to actually like say something like that.
Yeah, you should be Radiant Black.
Yeah, because knowing what Kyle and Michael and all the other people over Black Market Narrative have planned, they're always planning something. They always got some ace or some trick that they have up their sleeve or whatever. But I personally really I really did like Nathan. And as you mentioned, like earlier, like all the big superhero stuff, all the big game-changing things happened while Marshall was Radiant Black. But I think partially the reason why I voted for Nathan is because his potential, he had so much potential. Because here you have this disgruntled early 30s guy who tried to make it out as a big hotshot writer in Hollywood. He came back with $38,000 of crippling debt. He's forced to move back in with his parents. He's trying to realize his dream while also having to deal with this newfound responsibility that he didn't have planned out for himself. And now with the Catalyst War, as he made mention in 25B's ending, like with Catalyst War, like every other thing that he did, like writing, his career in LA, even maybe his relationship with Justine, like every single one of those things he ran away from. He never properly finished it, but now he has this opportunity with the Catalyst War being Radiant Black. He finally has what it takes to finish what he started and to prove himself worthy of maybe not even being Radiant Black, but being worthy of even being alive. And I do think that might have some notion of what I believe the Catalyst War really is about. I am going to save that for later on in the discussion because, you know, when we get through more of both of the issues, but that's just my current thoughts. So
that's a good point. That's really
It's a
strong
long way
point.
of saying yes, I voted for Nathan, and he would have been my personal choice, even though I did vote for them both.
This was a good week for
That's really
Nathan's, I
fair.
thought, too.
Yeah.
I mean, the other timeline he's dead, but I thought this was a really good timeline for Nathan. This
Mhm.
week in particular. But yeah. Also, the slash on.
It's interesting watching people backpedal on their votes. Like, oh, should I have? Oh my God, what happens if Marshall? It's like, guys, this is like, human beings are complex and they're not predictable. Like maybe some are, but like these human beings that we've been reading about, they're pretty complex. They're unpredictable. Their emotions change, and the context demands different things of them, right? So we've seen, I think you guys, Matt and Owen made really good observations early on, which we'll get to, but they were talking about how the endings of the previous issues somewhat reflect, but are also foils of the other, timelines and everything. So they're almost like there's synchronicity there, which is true. So, but yeah, at the same time, it's like we saw that before Nathan made a choice that cost human lives, right? Even though they both solved the issue at hand. Now it's the opposite. Marshall made a choice that cost a lot of human lives as well. So as we see, no one's perfect. But I think we said this before as well, which is one thing these issues show beyond their individual characteristics is that they work really well as a team. They work best as a team. They work the best when they're together. Yeah.
Also, one thing I want to point out, you notice how I just saw 001 scar on his face? Well, if you look at that weapon, it would fit perfectly if that was who did it as well. So him rebelling is probably what got him those scars and when he was exiled or sent away. So there we go. I don't know if it's been in the theories tab on Discord or not, but yeah, I feel like that's got to definitely be what that's from. Unless like Goose is around, like a 2-clawed goose in space. I don't know. But yeah, 001 is low-key like a S tier character. Like I'm really liking what they're doing in the depth here. We thought it was a villain, but really he's been like Obi-Wanning this shit. Like, no, we're gonna stop the Empire, I gotta train you.
Yeah, he started this movement, this anti-hive mind movement, which is in a short way to say like anti-catalyst movement, because as we're slowly discovering lore-wise, accretion is the process by which a vessel is selected and chosen and then promoted or whatever to become the person who's like selected next in line to be premier, whatever his name is. So this guy is saying, no, that programming sucks. Let's submit to the new way. And the new way, I'm assuming, has something to do with freedom of choice. And that's where we see a lot of their philosophical ramblings last issue, where we talked about in the other timeline, which we'll get into more, about how Jal disagrees, about how she was the one who told Nathan where to find Marshall. So she submits to the new ways, and she even refers to 001 multiple times. She's like, but he was the one who was in charge of us, and then he rebelled. So like, like, what does that mean? And it's really interesting how they interpret. One thing is like the will of existence. Like I feel like everyone uses that differently, to kind of like to push their own agenda. Like the priests use it. The priests who are all unanimous in their support for Catalyst use it as a justification for like their zealotry, right? They're just like, this is the will of existence. Like this has already been written. But like he uses it the other way around. And we'll get into that more later because that's in the second half. Yeah. So yeah,
and I think that just real quick about 001 before we move on from him, the most important thing I got from the first few pages, both in this issue and the other one, is that I think he has his own agenda at the end of the day. Like, he wants to save Earth. He wants to make sure Radiant Black wins this challenge, but he's not doing it like altruistically. No. I think he has his own reasons that he's or his own goal that he's working towards.
Good point.
Which ironically aligns with the freedom of choice thing.
Right.
He wants the freedom to choose.
It's more like enemy of my enemy right now.
Yeah. And they're talking about the third door, and the guy says to 001, he's like, I hope her vessel can keep his concentration. Smash cut to a funeral for his best friend, which would make it really hard to keep your concentration. I like that. Good cut here.
You know what's also interesting, like thematically, is that on the one side, Kieran is tempering the radiance, or he's trying. And on the other side, like 001's trying to influence the radiance into like giving them a favorable outcome. So it's really interesting to see like these two, I don't know if manipulative is the right word for both, but these two strategic people, but they have completely different goals, but they're both approaching it in a, like, let's influence the right players and pull the right strings kind of way.
It's like Varys in Game of Thrones and Littlefinger, basically, a little bit.
Yeah.
So this funeral panel, we get, it's a big week when I'm not talking about the second Kathy appearance in the series. This is huge, bigger than
Wondering
any
if you were
event
gonna bring
in any
that up.
series.
I just want to say he's been talking about this all day. Even
Yeah.
before we recorded, he's brought it up.
Literally
Okay.
messages like, is this Kathy? I was like, God
I'm
damn.
actually I'm more excited about the frog, but
Oh,
this
we're
is
gonna
big.
get to the frog. We're gonna talk about the
Oh,
frog.
dude,
Oh,
the
we're talking
frog.
about the
Yeah,
frog.
the
This
frog.
this is now a frog cast, but no, no, I'm not. I feel like a dick because like I really have I've influenced the Kathy movement too much, and I'm gonna dial it back. But it is cool to see Kathy. She has a new hairstyle. She looks great. Anyways, sad death for our main character. Also.
God, this motherfucker, this dude is not dialing it back because he
I-
actually cares
I
about it. He's dialing it back because he's literally scared that Kyle's gonna kill her now because it's the Catalyst War and nothing's off the table. And they're at a funeral, and this dude, it just hit him, right?
It's the
he's
Catalyst
just
War,
like,
okay?
oh shit.
Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
This is the tease for the
The
finale of
Catalyst
the season.
War.
All right, we're gonna get in trouble here. We should talk about the real series here. That's not
Yeah,
not
no,
my
100%.
fanfic.
It
This
was
was
fun,
wild,
of
though.
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
to see her. It was fun. I'm not gonna lie, like it was a nice nod, but
It was cool.
you guys like this is a brutal scene. Like
Yeah,
flip
it's
the
like a
pages.
military
Yeah,
funeral.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of that was wild when the soldiers are doing like the present arms or whatever with like their laser rifles or whatever, like their new tech. It shows how quickly that's been integrated into policy with the military and stuff like that. Those are their standard issue weapons now, I guess. Like it's wild.
Like the first thing you cut to from this picture, because obviously, guys, we're not going to show every image. Go buy the
Buy
damn
these
book and
books.
support it. They're so good, yeah. With the Humble Bundle now, you have no like excuse not to catch up. So
Well, the
I
Humble
know it's
Bundle's
done, but people who got it, now you got to keep up with it, baby.
I just missed it. I just missed the bundle like that day. Someone's like, it's over. It was the same day.
Yeah.
It's like it's down. I'm like, God damn it.
I would have
don't miss
gotten it,
the-
but I already have all the trades and whatnot physically, so it's like, what
Right.
won't even be the point?
I know.
I have them physically and digitally, so I'm like, I'm not gonna just buy them DRM free or whatever, just to be like I bought them a third time. But I
Yeah.
did get a lot of people to buy it, so it made me feel.
Oh yeah.
Guys,
Great deal.
did you guys have this moment where, because like this is the page right now that I'm looking at, but this is the left side of the double spread. The right side, oh sorry, not double spread, of the two pages of the spread, but the right side is a different page. And the very first panel is you see tears coming out of Marshall's eyes, and then he just immediately he's like, "Do they feel pain?" And I'm like, when I read this, the first thing I thought was, "Oh shit, this is not gonna go well, is it?" Like
No.
this is just like it's gonna be murder in this issue, isn't there? Like this dude literally blew up a guy with a black hole last issue. Do you guys remember that? He literally like put this black hole into a guy and spaghettified him. Like literally just murdered him. Like no remorse.
Yeah.
And so I
He
saw this
almost
stat, I was
he
like,
almost
oh,
murdered
shit.
Excel for a pizza joint.
Yeah, he
Well,
really
that's
sells
Uncle
a
Pete's.
pizza
Yeah.
joint.
I do
Hey,
think
man.
it's weird. I'm waiting
That
for that
pizza
like
could be
gold
that
member.
good, baby.
Yeah, I want that gold member ending where you find out like Kieran and Marshall are brothers. Don't they look like they could be brothers though? Like legitimately.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
actually we don't know for sure, but
That's
who
the
knows?
plot twist at the end. You find out Kieran is Marshall's missing dad. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Kieran
No,
Ward.
okay. Yeah. Kieran Ward. Yeah. No, that's a complete joke. We know that's not true, like not even remotely. But yeah,
Yeah.
Kieran here, I feel like this is the first time you get a glimpse at who Kieran really is. How he really is under like how it's like some people when they're always in control, they're just like calm, and then you like see them not in control of a situation, you get to see what they're really like. And it's like this is what happens with Kieran. He's just like a manipulative piece of shit. He doesn't care about Marshall or anything. He just wants to have control of the situation, and he wants to have like Marshall, the good little soldier, right? Like that's how I interpret it.
I love Marshall. Like, what about foreign? Like, he's gonna like talk to like foreign countries about like how to go forward with the U.S. Like, he's so pissed and he wants blood so bad.
Yeah.
It's so good. And usually people learn stuff and like you have like positive revelations at funerals and stuff like that. But no, Marshall's full rage. Like he's so.
He just
mad.
sees blood.
And
I think he was like one sentence away from saying, "Give me the nukes."
Yeah.
When I was reading this, I dreaded continuing because I was like, man, he's gonna like with the Burnett's right there, he's gonna have to go talk to them. And being Marshall, he's gonna say something stupid. Like even if he doesn't mean to, he's gonna say something. And that's what happens. And I don't think he said, like, honestly, looking back at it, I don't think he said anything wrong. I just think that everything is so raw in the moment that nobody wants to really talk about it. And it's like it's really hard to determine whether they like the Burnett's actually knew about Radiant Black or not in this moment, because it's like they don't act surprised to the news. It's more of a like agitation,
Mm. Yeah, I know. This hits so hard. We get like a double dose of sadness with the Burnett's in both issues. Like this, just that looks like the why is he gone, Marshall? Like, oh my god, it's just like these are parents. They don't know what to do. They got caught up in so much stuff. It's almost like a drug death or something like that. Like he got caught up in the drug scene, and then and like that those two together discovered the drugs together. Like it's so bad. And we get the new meme template too of the cat and the lady yelling at it, like the white cat, because like we get a you can see it.
But
yeah,
it was for Marshall. Like this dude went to existence to save his best friend, who now just got killed, and nobody gives a shit about him. Like he's that.
I don't think they know either. I don't think they
That's
know.
what I'm
I don't
saying.
think they know he's the one who got Nathan out of the coma.
But I know, but he does say here, well, Nathan was, and then we both were, but now it's just me. Those aliens are here to challenge me, and I failed. Maybe if Nathan was, and that's when his mom freaks out. But I'm thinking here, like, I don't even think they fully comprehend the nature of what's
They
happening.
don't. No,
because
they have
they're
no
just
idea.
raw.
I think he wanted to say if Nathan was Radiant Black, maybe he would have
Yeah,
succeeded
he would have
in the
saved the
challenge.
day. Yeah.
Ironic, because he does. That's what actually happens in the Nathan timeline.
That's a good point.
I just wish we had. I just wish we had one little interaction with Eva here, not necessarily Satomi, or maybe Satomi and Eva, because they're there. You could see him on the right hand side.
Nathan has a disproportionate advantage. He did not lose like Marshall, so we will see in the next issue how they both handle loss, or maybe that's what the fucking test is. But like anyway. Right? Like you guys agree with that, right? Like Nathan may overreact next issue because he literally just lost his father. He may go crazy. So it's like we don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, not to get too off track right now, but so far, I feel like every issue, and it's very easy to get off track with what's going on right now. So bear with me. But so far, I feel like some issues I felt like Nathan did better. Some issues I felt like Marshall did better, right? And again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but obviously Marshall really fucked up on this one, right? He did not do well at all.
Yeah.
But if you think about, I think it was 25. No, maybe it was 26. The first trial, I think it was 26. Nathan was the one who really messed up. All those people that didn't get to evacuate, all those people died. Remember, and that was another car moment that almost brought us to tears again.
Yeah.
With the on one hand, you could see the family in the car escaping in the Marshall timeline, the Nathan timeline, they're burnt to a crisp. So I feel like it's kind of a give and take. And now maybe it's time for next issue. It's time for Marshall to kind of bounce back after, experiencing what he did this time. And then Nathan to kind of see how.
But will Marshall bounce back though? Like
I don't know.
He might just lose it. He might just fall on.
Lose it even more.
Yeah.
Like how much grief can one person take in such a small amount of time before they
like he has no one else now. Like not in the same way that he has like Nathan. Like he has the
He's got
the closest thing is probably Eva.
Eva, but they're not like there's an
They've got their own lives. Their own worlds.
Yeah, they have their own lives. They're not close in the same way. They're more like two people thrust into a friendship or into commonality through through a similar situation, like they're in the same.
This is how we get to Marshomi starting, where Satomi and Marshall. We got nobody. The whole world hates us.
Also,
but like what you guys said, sorry, I just have to say this. You guys said before, it's like the thing of Nathan didn't want to ask for help, and that was a problem. And now Marshall doesn't want to ask for help. So it's like the roles are reversed because now Nathan's okay to ask for help. Like he realizes in the challenge that it's above him, it's too big.
The last bit of wisdom we have from Mr. Burnett is,
but it's cheating. He's getting help because in the last issue, Jal frees him, right? Yeah. And then in this issue, fucking Core goes up to him and he's just like, "Oh, you need all the help you can get. Go get everyone."
Oh yeah.
And he's just like, "Oh shit, gotta get everyone." And I'm just man, that's some bullshit. Like, who's helping Marshall? Nobody's helping Marshall.
It's true. Owen, what were you getting at?
So what I was going to say earlier is was two things. One, I saw on League of Comic Geeks that apparently like the reporter in the background, like behind Mr. and Mrs. Burnett, apparently that's the same reporter that like reported on like when Marshall first unlocked God mode and almost killed Excel. I think that might be the same reporter. And two, this is technically the first time that we see Satomi in the Marshall timeline. Like we've already seen Ava before, like she helped out Marshall in that first trial all the way back in issue number 26. But this is the first time that we've seen Satomi here in Marshall's timeline. Presumably she may be still in jail. Like it's never really like I would have really liked to have like, as maybe you guys have mentioned earlier, I would have liked to have seen a moment, a scene or not even a scene, like a moment where you see like Nate, like Satomi and Ava are just like looking on at Marshall, and they just have that look of, we're sorry what happened to you, man. And it's like, but you also have to realize what's coming next. Like something like that. Just
like we're here for you. So yeah, like
We got to
something
build up
along
his
those lines.
isolation, though, right? If we had anyone reasoning with him, we just want him to go off pissed off, and then we're gonna go do this. But yeah, I
Yeah.
get
I
it.
feel like
I would have liked that too.
Yeah, especially
for
considering
better.
no, man,
Go ahead,
ahead.
Owen. I'm saying for better or for worse, that's been a recurring theme with Marshall is that he has to figure stuff out on his own, even when he tries to get help or when he helps other people. At the end of the day, it kind of falls onto him. And I feel like Nathan, you were talking, Bash was saying about how he's getting help here and there. He's been getting. I feel like Nathan has had a better support system, whether as Radiant Black or as Nathan Burnett. He's always had a good support system around him. So it's just that reoccurring theme. It keeps happening. Marshall finding himself on his own.
Yeah.
He's got the oatmeal and the raisins. Meanwhile, Marshall's got like a kettle and some Mr. Noodles and no idea. No, I don't know. It's bad analogy.
An empty
but,
can.
Marshall's just he's struggling, man. And in this next page, like I don't know if I put it in the images. Oh yeah, thank God. So when you flip to this page, it's so great. Yeah, and it's like, did anyone think like, because they talk about nukes in the issue, and did anyone think like, are those like nukes? And then you realize no, they're just torpedoes.
Tiny.
yeah, they're small. Because I was like, man, like obviously you can nukes, they're like thicker, right? They have that, like if you played Call of Duty, you know what I'm saying, right? Like or like any war game, Battlefield or anything. But yeah, they have that look. They're like thicker and like a little bit shorter, but they're dense, they have more density.
Stubby.
Yeah, they're stubby, exactly. Yeah, so I was like, man, that's ballsy. Like I just kept thinking, like the first move he's gonna do is I'm just gonna fly cape mode everything, and just throw a bunch of torpedoes at the ship because like that's not gonna provoke the challenger. It's like, what are you thinking, man? Like
Yeah, he's not thinking, right? He's just going on pure revenge. Like he's not thinking
impulse.
Yeah, this is where I'm like, how did my vote go the wrong way? Now this is like Marshall is not taking this well. And even then, like then we get the quasars, right? I'm pretty sure that's what they are.
Yeah,
that
the quasars.
You know what this reminds me of? You guys, like it really reminded me a lot of like when Mark wanted to really trust dinosaurs, like Mark Grayson. You know what I mean? And he was just so convinced. He was like, no, I want to believe in you. Like I have to. And then he realizes like his decision just like was not like that simple, right?
Yeah.
It's not that simple, right? This reminds me, the stakes here reminded me a lot of that, where it's just like your choice is very important, but it's not just about your choice, it's about your journey as an individual too. And I feel like Mark in that Invincible, he saw like a bit of himself in Dinosaurus, and that's why he was able to relate to him and maybe be like, okay, no, I understand, I've been through something similar. But here it's like it's tough because it's your best friend, and there's no more like he's not there. So
there's no one to relate to. There's no one to
talk your thoughts out to. Like back in the previous issues, whenever Marshall had a really bad idea, they were like, there's usually Nathan or Satomi Nathan or Eva to be like, no, don't do that. You know what I mean? That's not a good idea. But here it's like there's no one. You just like do your thing. Like, did we make a mistake?
Real quick, I want to give a massive shout out to Eduardo Ferigato because this issue had. There's the page before this. It's like the close up on Marshall's face when he says, let's get ingenious. And then this page, and then 2 pages later, there's another shot of Radiant Black flying, and each one of them sent chills down my body. Like, he did a fantastic job. Wait, flip one more page. Flip one more page.
It's an impactful transition.
Right there, that one right there.
Yeah.
With the red glow from the robots showing on his chest, that was so good, man. I wish I could get that as a poster.
And that's the perfect onomatopoeia of the robots booting up, like as they're eating up, like it's so
we see.
I just realized something. What? Go forward one page. That's a very Premier like pose, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't know. That looks very similar.
Yeah, it could just be it's because Premier is the only other Radiant who can fly on his own will.
Maybe.
So maybe. It might just be a common like way. It could be. I mean, you could. You know what I mean?
Listen, I'm full tinfoil hat mode right now, so.
But like this page, because you were talking about how good the artwork and how smooth. They do this thing a lot. I don't know if this is a technique with a particular name, but there's this like form when you
It's like dynamic paneling. I don't know if that's the right term.
exactly
got the firepower up.
It makes
I thought
sense.
firepower
exactly.
ended.
It's
Look
when
at
you
that.
progress the paneling with like
Yeah.
one panel that just connects them, and it's not even a real panel. It's a completely borderless
Like
panel.
through the
So it's
art,
just like
through the art.
exactly,
Of
Yeah.
yeah,
the
through
events
the
or
art.
whatever.
I love that. I love when they do a lot with the cape mode and like breaking pages. And then last issue when I was reading, there's one where like he's grabbing the panels and pulling himself above them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
dude, that kind of stuff works so well in
It's
this
like
book,
when he's grabbing
right?
the railing, right? And he's like shocking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's
That was
shocking.
awesome.
Yeah,
There's too much
yeah.
to compliment with
So
this book. It's seriously. But,
no, it's definitely like you said, it's one of the most ambitious comics, and I definitely
Yeah.
agree with that. It really does take a lot of big swings, and the artwork is incredible. But let's get back to the story here. The quasars show up, and that's like the trial. That's what we found out as the new trial. And it's funny. Is it this issue? How they find it? Oh, right. So I find this so funny because it's just like in this issue, he gets his intel from Kieran, and we'll revisit how he gets in the other issue.
Yeah.
And this issue, Kieran's just telling him, okay, like this is what happened. This thing just appeared. I think it's your next trial, right? And he goes to this place called Pilsen, which I'm assuming is a city
It's in
Illinois
Chicago.
or something. Or
Place
in
in
Chicago.
Chicago.
Okay.
Good town.
Yeah. So it's a town. Okay. So then that's when he first shows up and he's like, you know what? No, like I'm gonna take the quasars and this is my lateral like thinking, my creativity. He's like, I'm gonna use them as weapons.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time where we see like Marshall refer to himself as a weapon, like where he like full on like explicitly. You're just like, no, I'm a weapon. That's the trick. He's like, I have to, what does he say? He says,
They gave me the ammo. And
yeah, he says they gave me the ammo to see if I know where to point the gun. And I'm just like, okay, you know
he's
what I
just
mean?
justifying it. That barely makes any
Yeah.
sense. Like, why would they even do
It
that?
doesn't. It
Yeah,
really
no, it
doesn't.
doesn't. And that's how you know he's not thinking. Like it's pure emotional, like impulsive rage, right?
Are you surprised he didn't absorb the quasar?
Yeah, I think his rage, like I think that's why they kept emphasizing the concentration. Whenever 001 or Core like shows up to him, he's like, you have to concentrate. You have to be super concentrated. I think that's why if you're not concentrated, if you're out of control, you're too emotional, you might not realize what Nathan did when he approaches it, which is like, oh, he says like, oh, did you ever approach like the edge of a cliff and you wanted to jump or something?
Yeah.
And he's like, I feel that way with this, and he sucks it in. And I'm like, if Marshall was more calm in the moment, maybe he would have had a similar thought. Maybe his first thought would have been like, let me rationalize or let me like see what's happening around me before I just jump to conclusion. But I think in his mind, as we saw earlier in the issue, he just wants to hurt Premier. He wants to hurt the Empire.
Yeah.
He wants to hurt Catalyst. So he was just like, no, I'm going to launch this shit straight back at them. And
I wouldn't
to
have
be
minded.
fair, so go ahead.
I wouldn't have minded a line like, "Oh, if they want, it looks like they want me to absorb it. I don't trust them.
Yeah.
Anything they want me to absorb can't be good for me," and just yeet it at them. That I could also see too. would kind of give me like at least because Marshall's kind of a bit more paranoid, untrusting, anyways, as is. So I would have liked that, but like I'm fine with what we got, anyways. What were you saying?
I was saying, like, yeah, like his response is pure violence, and he thinks he's rebuffed when he launches the quasar at the ship and they blows a hole in it. So because obviously earlier we saw the torpedoes didn't do nothing. Now this thing blows a hole in it. So maybe he's thinking, oh, I was right, or at least we got something out of this. And that's when he decides, okay, my plan is now to do a full-on assault with all these balls. So he tells Kieran, just tell me where the quasars are. I'm gonna launch them at the invasion, at like the onslaught of robots and ships that are coming at us, and we'll see where we get. And that's what happens for the next few pages. You get these awesome, incredible action sequences by Eduardo Ferigato and Raul Angelo, inside the colors inside the page, inside the book, And yeah, it's incredible. They actually managed to do some damage, and that's where you see this page. This is a big double spread page where you can see the splash at the top of him just continuing the battle. So good, yeah. And at the bottom, that's where Kieran is noticing that there's something wrong, and he tells him, "Look, it's just like not only do we not understand what's really happening, but there's too many coming at once." So he's telling Radiant Black like it's not working. Like you have to get out of there, and that's where in the next page, right? Oh, I jumped a little bit ahead. Sorry. In the next page, I'll show it on the book. So he's asking Kieran, "What do we do?" As you see here, he's asking Kieran, like, what do we do? And that's where he notices Kieran's panicking and he's literally exiting the lab already. And he's just like telling people to get into the chopper. and then you see a massive explosion, and you get this really cool, like if you've ever read 0 Hour, A Crisis in Time, right? It's like 0 Hour when DC erased everything. They did this double page, widespread page of just like, it's like the, you know, disintegration basically.
The real story's written in invisible ink. Get a UV light up to that. No,
I was like, at first I was like, is this is part of the story for sure, especially when you read the second issue. But I've seen this technique before. So
yeah.
And then you get the final page, which is right here. So this page is really cool because we were talking about this with Owen and backstage. Owen astutely pointed out before, at the end of the Rogue Sun arc, a moment that's paid off from Supermassive, which is when we look at the when they get the visions, we see Marcus in his, like, you know, flaming form, and Owen was the first person to notice that and point that out on the server. So I was thinking, okay, that's a great observation. That's awesome to see the payoff. When are we going to see the payoff for this? And that's when I realized, like, these smokes, the setting looks familiar. And that's when I realized, yeah, it is actually, it's happened. We've seen that happen in Supermassive. It might actually be the same moment, and I'm going to pull up the image here so that everyone can see it. So give me a second. In the meantime, yeah, guys,
Rough.
what did you
Isn't
think
it crazy
about this
that
ending?
all this was foreshadowed that long ago?
Yeah, because
Yes.
this was like, that was 2 years ago, because Supermassive came out in late February, and now it's late February here. So it's like, and I believe Michael mentioned that they've been working on like the basics of what Catalyst War is going to be like since like issue 4 or 5 release. So they've been working on this for a really, really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also,
if you want to thread the needle like that, you have to plan ahead like 2 or 3 years, and you can see the results of that kind of thinking, right?
And also, I really want to give massive props, like the entire creative team, like Kyle Higgins, Joe Clark, Eduardo Ferigato, Marcelo Costa, Raul Angelo, Rod Fernandes, Becca Carey, Mr. MassiveVerse himself, like, and obviously, of course, you know, all the other ones too, like production artists like Wesley Griffith, and Ryan Sidoti's also given like a huge like, special thanks of the shout out to Ryan of the Invincible podcast and Circle Guy News. The amount of coordination that it must take to craft a story as big as this must be crazy, because you fundamentally have 2 different versions of the exact same story scenario playing out. And there's the image that Bash talked about, Supermassive. You have 2 stories playing out, but they're fundamentally different. So you not only have to keep track of what's come before of this series in previous issues, but now it's like, okay, so this is what happened in the Marshall timeline, so this is how this is going to continue forward here. Okay, this happened in the Nathan timeline. And having to write 2 scripts with 2 artists and colorists doing the work and bringing it to life. And you also have the same letterer and editor helping to sort of spearhead and really bring this whole thing together. It is a massive, massive, some would even say supermassive undertaking. Matt, you immediately knew where I was going with that, and I commend you for that. But yeah, it's so good. And that double page spread by Eduardo Ferigato and Raul Angelo is just
so good.
Yeah. And
That's
that ties
amazing.
in, Ali, you had a point earlier on before we went on the air about the timeline of how these issues were coming out and how it relates to the delays.
So I was just gonna say, you know, the delays weren't great. A lot of us were expecting these issues, and they got delayed. But I just want to say, if you look at it as a whole, the delays started in July, or at least issue 25 came out in July of last year, and now we're in February of 2024. It's been 8 months, and we have gotten 8 issues. So even though they might not have come out on a monthly basis, we still got the same amount of story during that time, and it was a great story. So I'm glad that they actually took their time to do it. So kudos to them either way, because whether they were late or not, quantity wise, we didn't get affected, and quality wise, it's getting even better and better. I'm still super hyped.
Exactly. So yeah, if anyone has gripes with the release schedule, it's pretty impressive what they pulled off, and we haven't compromised any quality, and really we're just getting the same amount of content just in bursts, really, and it's been great. So yeah, this was a hell of an ending, though. Chicago, presumably all of Chicago, if not just that small town of Pilsen.
Dude, that's what I was wondering. Like, is it all?
It looks pretty big, man. It looks like a huge part of Chicago, if not all of it.
I can see it. Yeah, it looks like Chicago. Like Illinois is intact, but
just to be that guy. the explosion, and this does make a difference. The explosion in this issue in 28 is 2 pages, and the explosion in 28.5 is 1 page. I think there's a literal reason for that because Nathan does a better job of handling the quasars, so I think he minimalized the radius of the explosion, whereas like Marshall was just like let it get out of control, and so it was a much bigger explosion. I think that's a plausible way. But
Marshall definitely made it worse. Probably like getting them all going. And the quasar thing was genius. But yeah,
real quick to give you guys a sense of scale, I've been to Chicago a couple times, so I'm not like super familiar with it. So I just looked at it on a map. Pilsen is like a part of Chicago. It's in the heart of Chicago where there's a museum. Like it's part of the city, right? It's not like a suburb or whatever. It's right next to Chinatown. And just by the size of this explosion and looking at the map, it looks like at least half of Chicago is gone. And Kyle, I know you're from Chicago, so please feel free to correct us or shed some light, because to me that looks like a big part of the city's gone.
What I just realized
between this and firepower, Chicago's taken the biggest like beating. Like, you know what I mean?
One timeline you got a giant dragon, and the other one you got giant robots. Either way, giant kaiju monsters are coming down. So be prepared, Chicago. You could in the real world, you could be next.
At least it's not New York. It's always New York that gets hit with these catastrophic events. So.
All cause Stan Lee like to live there. Goddamn, no. But
well, you're saying the aliens or whatever invading forces that come to New York aren't going there for Times Square? Because that's what I thought. You're saying that's not what it is? It's not for the Empire State Building?
No, it's the M&M store, actually.
Here's what I just realized. No, but listen to this. If Chicago's gone, that means we probably lost both Burnett's as well. So in the other timeline, we only lose one. That's something to think about.
And also, Marshall may be out of a job now because the real world is no more.
Yeah.
So not only has he lost his best friend, he lost his city, he also lost his job.
So you're saying there's no more bath bombs? Oh, that's the biggest
bath bombs are gone.
Not just that, but
I will say it looks like Lockport, Illinois is kind of far from Chicago, so they might be saying it's like pretty inland.
Yeah, he's like doing the fucking math. He's like, I gotta know.
I need to know. I need to know. It's gonna keep me up at night.
We saw the real world go up in the other timeline though. Like you can see real world in the supermassive like display there. So either this is a different explosion or that one. I think we're to assume the real world's gone, but I don't know. But also we know it's a really good job because you can afford a house with it. So like, that's a big loss. Yeah. Anyways, we should probably move on to the next issue, but this was a major, this was a failure for Marshall. Seriously, you lost the whole city. You lost Nathan last time. Now you lose it looks like at least Chicago or like a significant part of it. So,
that reminded me of another thing because at the ending of this, when the explosions go off, and at least I'm going to say, like, for the sake of it, for generalizations purposes, Chicago was destroyed.
Yeah.
Timer comes down. And he's talking to Marshall in like that weird language or whatever. And he's mentioning like all these different percentages of like failure. And it's like, how much you want to bet the fact that the reasoning why he said those 2 percentages is one of those percentages is Nathan's timeline percentage of failure. And the other one is Marshall's.
Interesting. I took it as he's
I took it as
like a loading bar. Like it's a loading bar. Yeah. But I like what you said. I did not think about it that way. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he says assessment finalized, display results, execute. So it looks like the test is over and he's like, I'm ready to,
I will say too, that's like a programming thing. Like when you execute a program, that's when the program actually does what it's supposed to do. So probably
and he's like, that's like the gospel there, because like the programming and the talk of the hive mind and stuff like that is he's basically like a preacher, like an evangelical preacher carrying out like his religious, his holy wars now basically for, anyways, what were you saying over there, Owen?
Because I came up with that because this reminded me, I don't know which one of you guys came up with this theory, but it was somebody mentioned that one of the theories that you guys had was Primer is testing Radiant Black across both of these timelines, but it's the same Primer, but he can see between the two realities. And so I took that and I used because obviously, of course, every single piece of dialogue is written in here for a reason. There's no way.
It's also like the 2 timelines exist for a reason as well.
Kyle and Joe know for a fact that there's a reasoning why primer has these two percentages. And so
Mhm.
with that and the combination of the earlier theory that one of you guys had of this is the same primer, but he's challenging both Nathan and Marshall across these timelines, and he's like assessing the data and how they failed in one timeline compared to how they failed in another. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, it's just a theory, but I do think there might be some precedence behind it. That's all I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
nothing's
I
off
hear
the
you.
table.
Yeah, nothing's up there. No, I agree 100%. And this is like Radiant Black. There's so many misdirects and you know subversive maneuvers in the storytelling in a good way. That's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that segues perfectly into my next point, which is let's just get the page. Like this is the cover to 28.5. This is the half with Premiere, and let's dive right in. This first
Wait,
page
so is that
is the
Premiere's
same
robot?
deal.
Is that his robot on the cover? Presumably.
Yes, yes, his,
we did-
his
saw that in
colossal. Yeah,
27.
we saw that.
Okay.
We saw when they face off and they have the big like the fast and Furious moment. You know, like where they always face off. Right?
Also, speaking of the covers, most of the connecting covers for the Catalyst War so far have been done by Marcelo Costa. I don't
Mhm.
know if Rod Fernandes also colored those or if Marcelo also colored them as well. But 28 and 28.5 are special as both of these covers were illustrated by
Eduardo.
Eduardo Ferigato and colored by
Yeah.
Rod Fernandes. And it also had accompanying Walking Dead 20th anniversary
Yeah.
connecting
Yeah.
covers as well, because this was supposed to release back in December, and this was part of an initiative that Image was doing. So in addition to these two really awesome covers done by Eduardo and Rod Fernandes, we also got these really awesome Walking Dead covers by Stefano Simeone of Midlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I picked up those covers, but I bought them online because my stores didn't have them, so I don't have them in hand yet. But I'm excited to get them. And
These show the
I've heard
timelines better, I find, right? Because the right
Yeah.
one is like this story with the Radiants helping, and then the other one is just pissed off
Yeah.
Kate mode going solo.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
So yeah, I noticed that. It's nice because the other ones have to keep it kind of vague, and both issues kind of had the same thing last time we were facing off against the Competent Syndicate there in the monks. But yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting.
yeah. So the first page is the same as it's drawn differently, but it's the same idea as last issue 28, where 001,
go.
aka Core, is sneaking into a ship, and this is really cool. One of the best pages, I think. Even though it's random. This reminded me a lot of the Collector in Marvel.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It looks exactly like that in a good way. Like I mean, again, like the MassiveVerse does everything in their own aesthetic and their own fresh take. So it reminded me of that in a good way. And I just you called him Frodoc, but I don't know what his name is.
Whatever. Next time
He
Kyle's
looks-
on
he
here, the
looks
first question:
amazing.
what's the
Yeah.
frog's name? What's his
these
backstory? And
characters. Yeah.
also
The
next to the
frogs
frog,
really like Kathy's henshin or whatever he said on Twitter.
Yeah.
yeah. He Kyle really fanning the Kathy flames here. But if you look to the right of our frog friend, that does look a lot like Darkhawk to me. I know it probably isn't,
Yeah.
but Kyle did write Darkhawk for Marvel a couple years ago. Really good series to check out. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I love the little, like, there aren't cameos, but I love it. We have like a giant enemy crab.
Yeah.
We got like a
I love
gingerbread
it.
man.
If you look in the middle one, just literally the thing in the middle, if you could zoom in on that looks like Alan to me. Alan the alien.
Yeah,
Dude, this
With
looks
arms
like
and those feet.
yeah.
This looks like a Thraxon.
That's a Thraxon. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
Thraxon.
Really?
That was my first thought when I looked at him. I'm like, is that a Thraxon? Is this like a
Yeah.
reference to Invincible?
We know
And
Kyle's read
this guy
Invincible
does
and is a
kinda
fan
look
of
like
it.
Alan. Oh, of course. I mean, this was.
It kind of looks
was
like
in this
Alan,
movie?
doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
And like it's almost legally distinct enough. And this also reminds me of if
Yeah.
there was like a Spawn issue and they didn't crossover, we had the superheroes in a cage and you just saw their arms hanging out and stuff like that. I love scenes like that. It's like Easter egg. It's an Easter egg frenzy,
Yeah.
really.
Dude, no, I love this page. I love this page. And I sincerely hope at least one of these characters come back, even if it's like a stupid moment where they just die immediately. I don't care. But I sincerely hope it's like the frog looking thing because the character looks amazing.
There's no way it can't be. That's that's the rating going forward, in my opinion. It's amazing. It's like a perfect.
Frodoc
How
for Radiant
do
Black.
how do the feet support the freaking like the torso face
Probably
thing?
just
Like,
rolls.
Magic.
Yeah,
You've never
that's what I
seen
was
Mike.
thinking, it
You've never
rolls.
seen
Yeah.
Mike from Monsters
Yeah.
Inc. Mike
Oh
Wazowski.
yeah. No,
Mike
that's a great comparison.
But
Yeah.
again, like we're laughing and joking, but this shows just how strong the Catalyst or the Empire, Premier's Empire is, where this is what they've captured and
love
fought
this.
against them.
Yeah.
It's
This is the
storytelling.
first time, it felt like
Yeah.
Invincible a lot, but in a good way. Like not in like this is the same thing, but like this is the first time where I felt like Radiant Black is actually going like galactic.
We're not just going to space. Yeah, we're going galactic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like we're seeing all this cool shit, and then you see this is the part I was looking forward to the most is Core talking to Zhao. Dude,
Yeah.
Zhao's such an interesting character, and she has like so little screen time or like panel time in this book, but she makes such a large impact with what few words she shares with Core, because she says really interesting things, which let's see. She says to him, they have some, they talk a little bit. He's asking, okay, he says dreams of ascendancy in battle, and then she says, my mothers were sacerdotes of the lower orders. The sacrifices they made for me to be even considered for accretion were far more than most could handle. Your new way seemed so grotesque, disrespectful to their memories, yet here I am about to die for it. Strange. Then he says, well, it was surely the will of existence. And that's what I was telling you guys earlier, is that everyone uses it differently. This guy who dissents from the path uses it to justify it. He's saying, well, if you really believe that, then this is also the will of existence, which really shows you how clever he is. Like that's why like they quote him in the earlier issues and shit, because like he really is clever. I can see him attracting their curiosity or like sparking their curiosities, because if they're all this hive mind and they're all programmed to think the same way, but he's actually asking all these interesting questions that might actually get them to think more about freedom or freedom of choice.
Yeah, he's Neo, like unplugging them from the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but he's super interesting though, and I agree with what you said earlier that he's like an S tier character. I think when we first did the rankings, we said A because we didn't know about him. But I think if we had to pick at least the four of us or the podcast folks, I think we could agree, all of us, that he's an S tier character now.
Yeah. And I like that. I like what you pointed out about whether he's using, is it manipulation, saying like this is existence away, like the way you're using their worldview and kind of like rewriting a little bit and allowing them to still go by the religion or the religious framework that's set up, but also saying, well, what about this? Like if existence would allow for it, then I mean, it's just existence's way. It's very clever. Like Kyle's killing it, and the dialogue of 001 and his people, like it's very layered and very dense. Like it's the toughest to accept, to understand really for me, and to make sure that I get directly what he wants to convey here. But no, I love it, and they almost look like, I get like orc vibes from like Lord of the Rings, WoW a little bit in some of these designs. I like it.
The thing is, this is actually the thing I was holding to tell you guys the most is this is, I think, one of the biggest lore drops when he says this next sentence in the series. He says, well, it was surely the will of existence. And then she says, and without a stay of execution, I will rejoin it in accordance with its programmings. Is the sacrifice. And then she gets cut off and he says, he is alive. And then she responds, this is so important. She says, bittersweet. I suppose that means your champion failed. What? So that's what it gets me thinking, like, okay, so Nathan was meant to die. Like that was passing the test meant Nathan had to die in some way. It was just like, how was he supposed to die?
So when he says he is alive, he's talking about Nathan, right?
Sorry, Marshall. He's talking about Nathan. Yes, he's talking about
Marshall. I don't know.
Sorry. He's talking about the one where he was saved. So he's talking about Marshall. Yeah.
So Marshall is alive.
Yeah, because this is
the champion that failed is Nathan.
Yeah. So sorry. Marshall was meant to die, like in that timeline, and that was part of the test being passed. That's why I think this line is so important, because we have to unpack it more, and I don't think we can do that right now because we have to read the other issues, which I haven't done recently. But I did read 27.5 quickly, and she's the one who was the traitor. She is the person who goes against the other priests and tells Marshall where tells Nathan where Marshall is. She tells him straight up, she's like, you got to go save him. He's at that statue. If you go now, you might just get to him. And if she doesn't interfere, I don't think there's a chance that Nathan gets there in time, because it was an urgency kind of thing.
For sure.
Yeah. So this is super interesting. Like, what does that mean? The fact that he like she says bittersweet. I suppose that means your champion failed. So maybe that means becoming premier means you have to, because do you guys remember what Kyle said, that these guys are basically the four horsemen of apocalypse, and then like Premier's like Apocalypse himself or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the thing. Yeah, so it's like the plague or whatever. So it's like, if that's the case, doesn't that mean he's a murderous motherfucker? And that like the person who's gonna have to become premier is gonna have to be super like murderous. He's gonna have to be able to kill off a whole bunch of
hold
people.
on. Because we kind of touched on this backstage when we were kind of trading theories. We were saying, or I was saying that whoever one of them is going to become premier, right? And if you look, most of us, well, all three of us reread the series this past week from the beginning. And something I noticed is that in the first few issues, when Nathan connects with the Radiant says, "Are you willing to kill him or take his life?" Something along those lines. And Nathan says no. Well, Marshall gets asked that same exact thing. Marshall immediately says yes. Doesn't take a second to think about it. Now, connecting that to what you were just saying, that Premier has to be a murderous MFer.
Yeah.
Marshall would be the murderous one and not Nathan. So I'm thinking 001 wants Nathan to be the winner and become the new premier, so he could change the old way, so we can have Nathan be the new premier in the new way.
Interesting. I like that.
I was a little bit of rambling, but I hope it made sense.
No, it does. This whole thing, it's really layered and confusing.
It is. It's really layered.
It's really tough because we have timelines. It's hard to remember like all of the elements of each timeline with every dialogue, every box of dialogue. Like it's tough, and that's why I feel like we might need to do a bonus episode in between, or definitely afterwards, to break down all the Callous War and like stuff we didn't catch on the first go through. But yeah, that is a big lore drop. I think that is really interesting the way they're playing it. It's almost like they're beyond the game. They know way more about this than we do, and no, this was interesting.
No, and then she says the line before is just as interesting. And she says, well, surely, when he says, well, it was surely the will of existence. And she says, and without a stay of execution, I will rejoin it. In accordance with its programming is the sacrifice. So maybe the sacrifice, like, I don't understand. Like they had to kill him to somewhat, I don't know, prevent her from, I don't know. So it compromises her within the pecking order of everything. So it's really interesting. Clearly there's some sort of like order and structure to this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe that sacrifice was part of that whole thing. It was part of the test. So I'm very curious, like what exactly does that entail in terms of the test itself? Because as we read this issue, we see that there's a lot of hints that the test is specifically tailored to the person. And we knew that to an extent, but it's like even every single choice you make. And that's, we know that when I don't know if it's this issue or the last one, when he was like, I would have preferred for the war to be like on the moon. I'm just like, and that's what I'm just like, and like, what? Because like, there's clearly like layers to why would you want it on the moon? That's the first thing I thought was like, why would you want it there? To obviously less loss of life and casualties, but I'm thinking like there's something more to it. But anyway, yeah. So that was.
I'm just saying, if you blow up the moon, Earth is
fucked.
Exactly.
Say about the tides.
It's very important.
Yeah, I do think, and then we get to go to the post office, and it's really interesting that there's a big contrast in. So Marshall looked really good. Like even though he lost his friend, they mentioned at the funeral that like he's got more. He's viewed better than any politician right now, right? Like I'm thinking it was after the funeral, and in this timeline, Radiant Black looks awful because Nathan was just kind of like walking around, and they said that those spacemen just pummeled him, and he kept just taking it, right? So there's not a lot of faith in Radiant Black here, in the Nathan Radiant Black, in the way that he goes about doing things.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and it's also the lack of control apparently they have. So he does say specifically, he says Nathan has to do what I say. He has to work with us, and if he's not compliant, we'll have to make him listen. And that's when Satomi tells him he won't hear, and he thinks he has to do this all himself. And that's where he says, I just had a sitting senator ask if we could get you to pallet swap and fill in. If I told you how many times I've heard Nuke suggested the past 3 days you wouldn't sleep tonight. So like Kieran, you get to really see that he has no interest in really like his interest lies a lot in being able to specifically dictate and control these heroes. Like they're tools to him to fulfill his agenda. And you see that not only with what he's saying about Nathan, but also immediately with what he says to Satomi, because he says to her, convince him, do that any way it takes, and you can consider your sentence commuted. And then she says, which is what we've said before on the Discord, I could walk out of prison whenever I want to, right? And that's when he just gives her this like horrible look, and he's like, "Fine, you don't want to play ball?
Yeah.
We'll do this a different way." And I'm like, "God damn, what is he gonna?
Yeah.
What is he gonna do there? Like, how is he gonna? Is he just gonna
No.
threaten her family? Is he gonna just, you know what I mean?
True.
Like, I don't even know, but we
Not
get her
just
on
that.
the
We know she can walk out of prison because she got blushed since the last issue. Look at those rosy cheeks that we don't really see on Satomi, which, I mean, it's true. It's a nice little touch and also adds like a little bit of red to Radiant Red.
yeah.
That's a joke, but yeah, I noticed that. It's nice to see Satomi. I've missed Satomi. It's nice to see
Yeah,
she's
me
the heavy
too.
hitter. Like,
I thought he meant shift when he said go a different way. I thought he meant using shift now.
yeah,
Putting him on the.
Oh yeah, that works too. That works too.
yeah, it could be shift. It's hard to tell with Kieran. And also, I was just looking at his scar. Like, he's such a pragmatic guy, so practical. Like, whatever, like, could have, like, whatever it was that gave him the scar could have easily like cut his eye or whatever, but he managed to save the eye. I don't know. That's just me reading super far into the design, but I like that little scar detail. And then we get the trippiest page in the series.
Now that you mentioned it, we were talking about how him and Core are playing two different sides and pulling strings. They both have scars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
It just makes it funny, but yeah.
Yeah. And he's got two scars too, so 001's wiser, that's for sure. No. This was
But yeah, what's good? No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this was really cool. This page with Papa Burnett doing his like super cool like spy technique stuff. But what were you saying?
Yeah, it's exactly what I was gonna say. It's
Good.
and we were kind of talking about this before, and maybe someone can enlighten us in the comments or on Discord. But when or for how long did Mr. Burnett know that Nathan was Radiant Black? Whether it be at this point or at some point, you know. I know, was it you, Owen, who said kind of been like an Aunt May situation, or like he knew all along, or might have happened off panel?
Yeah.
I do have a couple of theories. The first one, off the top of my head, that I remember is he probably might have connected to the dots because it's like, oh, isn't it odd the fact that a mysterious new superhero ends up coming to Lockport around the same time as when my son comes back from California? Isn't that a bit odd? But the second theory that I have is when Marshall comes back from existence in issue number 11 and Nathan tells him, Marshall, I woke up 6 weeks ago. What if when Nathan first came out of that coma and Marshall was still in existence or trying to get out, that it was during that 6-week period that Nathan told his dad, I know this sounds crazy, but this is basically everything that's going on. Like these are the two theories that I have. If anybody else has any kind of ideas, like let us know. Kyle or Michael, if you're willing to tell us, like go on ahead. But you know,
I also just thought it could be from news coverage because we know in the other timeline everyone knows who Marshall is. Like they know Marshall Ward is Radiant Black, so I wouldn't. It stands to reason that like in this timeline they also know that Nathan is Radiant, even if he's not compliant.
Like,
and then
Mills
we also
know as
Mills
well.
and Peters know. Mills and Peters know. We don't know who they told, but they definitely know. And then we also see that he has a card from Sergeant
Hebert there. Yeah.
Yeah, Hebert, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
basically he got visited by somebody. So
yeah. So if people are doing that, they're probably gonna say, hey, you're in danger, your son is this, you're in danger, so we're gonna watch you, or here's what you need to know. I figured that's probably it. And we could get a flashback, right? I feel like in next issue after rest in peace, Henry here after what happens. But next issue, we might get a flashback and, touch on a couple moments we might not have had to in the war and have Nathan maybe looking back. Who knows?
Yeah. I wonder if it's like, because it was so random deciding where to put the quasars. And I kept thinking, like, is the first one in Gold Coast? Because, like, a lot of Australian people who worked in the MassiveVerse, including Michael Basuto. But even if it's just a funny coincidence, I love that little touch.
That's cool. That's funny.
Yeah. So we see in this issue, his dad manages to save his ass in sense of basically he prevents him from potentially getting caught by prying eyes. And they go to a secure location where he's basically telling him, like, we have to go take care of the situation. You stay out of the city, all that. And that's where I thought it was so funny because he's like, it's okay, we'll take the Skyway. And you see Marshall in a very Marshall way putting his legs up on the hood of the car. Like he's like really enjoying himself in that car while he's getting transported.
If you look at the first panel on that page, you see Nathan talking to his dad, and in the background, Marshall is moving boxes with a woman. It looks like that's
not Satomi, but yeah.
Or is that his mom?
No, that's his mom, 100%.
His mom, you think?
Okay.
I mean,
I thought it was the mom too.
It makes sense. It's mom. Yeah. It's got to be. Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
I love Radiant Black flying with the car. It brings me back to like issue 1,
Yeah,
2, 3,
classic.
4, like that era. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of callbacks in this issue, or
Yeah.
at least a couple, notably. And Reddit does save the day. Honestly, if there's ever a disaster, I guess just go on Reddit. This was
Dude, it
like
was so
honestly,
fun.
I think the most unrealistic part of this story so far is that a Redditor is helping to save the day.
Yeah. I think that's also like low key, like that's just how the Discord is, or like any like I feel like comic book fans in general are like that. They always want to dig for the answers. I mean, Owen
Yeah.
knows he's like
Yeah.
that. So we're all like that.
That's how you do any ARG, right? The internet kind of
Yeah,
comes together
100%.
and tries to
Oh,
figure
yeah.
it out.
No, but I love
Yeah.
how Kyle implements technology and like social media into this. It's never
Yeah.
how do you do, fellow kids. It's like
Oh.
it's like it's always been there the way he does
Dude,
it.
they
just
have
naturally.
real usernames. Like their
Yeah.
usernames are just as ridiculous as real life usernames. So it's a bunch
Yeah.
of random shit, and then like Battle Apple. Oh yeah, that makes sense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or like bring
Yeah,
the
like-
Cristo.
Like those automated ones. Like my buddy
Yeah.
got a random Xbox game or take. It was just like chain pair. It was like randomly generated. Yeah, that kind of stuff that really engrosses you in the media. And then they're talking bombs. We're doing the Reddit stuff. We're looking at the quasars, and the quasars were genius, I think, because like you don't really think it's so out of like from out of space. Like the radiance came presumably to be a positive change, but then the quasars are just so unstable and ridiculous, and they're not meant to be there. And the way they replicate and how to get rid of them, it was genius.
It was, yeah. Marcelo Costa, like, this is the first time I've noticed like the difference on the artwork, just because it's very like close stylistically. They both do a really good job of keeping it like tonally similar and But one thing that I noticed is that Marshall's face is a little more animated here, whereas like I feel like it looks more like anime in a good way, but I feel like with Eduardo it's more expressive. Like you can tell when he's really upset or emotional, whereas here he's always like more excited, more lively. So they both, like, you can tell it a little bit in the face if you've seen their artwork enough.
Like look at that reaction, like the detail on the Redditor's body, like the lighting is so cool.
Amazing. This was amazing. Like this was just a great issue, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it was, and I feel like Ferigato and Costa are almost like it's almost like friendly competition. Who can who can put out the best work, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, they definitely like push each other to greater heights, and it's such an incredible, like, I always say, and I really wholeheartedly mean it, like we have some of the best artists in comics right now, especially in mainstream comics. And then we have some of the best creative duos. There's not a lot of books that are going to give you, especially indie books, that are going to give you an artistic duo specifically with someone as good as like Marcelo Costa and Eduardo Ferigato. And then on the other end, on Rogue Sun, like with Marco Renna and Abel. Like, it's crazy. I was literally looking at like Marco Renna and Abel stuff the other day, and I was like, man, we're so spoiled. Like, we got like two amazing artists. Like,
and then the
Supermassive
with Dinaculo as well. Like, it's a who's who of like legends.
So back to the trial, the quasars. We see that with Nathan, we were talking about this earlier. His first impulse is to like go and absorb it. He has this like this more analytical approach, in the sense that like there's a bit of impulse there, right? Because he's just reacting, but there's more thought to it for sure. Because he's not like just angry; he's just thinking like rationally. He's like, you know what? I have this feeling. I'm going to investigate it. It paid off. Yeah, but then your favorite shifter makes an appearance.
More like
what did you guys think of that? What did you guys think of that? I know Owen must have been really excited to see his favorite shift is the Be Out of Nowhere.
Yeah, it was definitely nice to see him back, and also this actually clarifies like where exactly in the timeline the Shift Chapter 5 story takes place in, because for those who remember the Shift one shot that released back in late December, that had a special bonus story by Kyle Higgins, Daniele Dinaculo, Walter Bamonte, and it basically explained like what happened to Shift after he got arrested in Arc 4. And Kieran basically buys Shift in the 5 Indy kit for $20 million, and it's like, you basically work for me now, in kind of like a Task Force X type way. And like a lot of us were debating like whether or not like, is this set in the Nathan timeline? Is it set in the Marshall timeline? Is it set in both? But with the release of 28.5, we now know that this is set in the Nathan timeline. And we do get that little ending thing from the end of the issue where it's like Shift will return and Radiant Black 28 and 28.5. But now we know like what exactly the extent of his involvement in Catalyst War is now, because he's basically a supposed pawn for Kieran, or it's very clear he's probably got like his own agenda and whatever, but for the time being, he's working with Kieran and also working on his Japanese, because he immediately responds with Moshi Moshi. It's like, wow, look at Mr. like took a Rosetta Stone over here.
He's a douche. I love it. And yeah, I mean, what did you guys think? Was it so satisfying? Like immediately, because you go from the left, you see them on both pages, and you read the left page, and it's like, yeah, he's fighting Nathan, and then just Marshall runs him over with the car. It's just like it's so satisfying, you know. But yeah, that was awesome. And then I love their like tactical retreat. It was a very Pokemon like runaway moment, you know.
Flee.
Yeah, flee, exactly. It was just like, it's time to go, baby. And then they do another flying sequence with the car. This part I really liked. So in the next page, you get a bitch fit from Marshall. He's just like, God, I hate that guy, which is funny because his name is Guy, so it's like the double funny moment.
Right.
And that's when they're like, okay, we got to figure out what's going on. And he says, Marshall says, killer news, the internet is still undefeated, someone beat you to it. So the internet really comes in clutch, and they find this graduate student from the University of Chicago dorms, and they manage to track him down, and he actually is he's a graduate like physics student or something. So he's able to help them by explaining what the hell's going on, what they have to do. And at one point they just look at him and they're like, how do you know all this? And he's like, it's a very competitive program. Yeah. Here's the kid. So yeah, he says,
unsung hero.
Yeah, exactly. Based on the data in the forum, it's we think they're quasars, incursions forming in a specific pattern based on a fixed point on an n-dimensional solid with two axes of rotation intersecting with a two-dimensional space. Okay, so and then there's a little diagram.
I'm assuming the science checks out.
Oh yeah. So what he says is he gives them an ETA on when the next quasars are going to pop up, and basically explains to them through deduction eventually that they need to find these quasars and absorb them. And it's not just radiant black necessarily that is able to do this, but any radiant, because it's a particle thing. So we see that in the next page in Ravenswood Manor, where Nathan gets to the right location. As you can see, there's a really cool page where he just absorbs all the energy.
That's how it feels to chew 5 gum, basically.
Yeah. He says this has so much energy, it feels like it's pulling. And then he says, that's it, it's gone. And then that's when he's like, you got to go quickly. There's this entanglement thing happening. And he's on his way to the other one. And that's where Marshall, when he's with the graduate student, is told it's any radiant will work. And that's where he's just like, fuck it, I'm going to take initiative. Let's get the other radiants in here. So
yeah, it's the only reason Tommy showed up. Marshall called her last time, right? So that's what he's saying is like the only reason
he did it again here.
Yeah. So Marshall kind of saves his ass. Marshall is the best man in the chair of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And also, one other thing I want to mention really quick is, I believe the fact that like with the appearance of the of these like little whatever's those I think that their appearances and how rapidly they're beginning to pop up, I think that might have actually been tied to whether or not the best friend of Radiant Black was supposed to be sacrificed, because in the Marshall timeline, Nathan died, and when the guys were sacrificing, like in service to opening the third door, and then like they try and kill him, and then like all the quasars begin rapidly popping up way more than they can control. But in 28.5 in the Nathan timeline, because Marshall didn't get sacrificed, what if that may have affected with the timings and how many of the quasars were able to appear? Because like as Nathan's talking with one of the Redditor, he's like, wait, that's weird. That showed up a bit earlier than it was projected to be. So what if how the sacrifice might have had some sort of influence over how the challenge was supposed to go?
Interesting.
That's interesting.
I was thinking it might have to do with whether they absorbed the quasar or use it as a weapon. That was my thought, but yeah, I think that's valid too. That's interesting. I don't know. I'm not sciencey enough to understand, and plus, we don't know, right? Because there's real science, and then we're bringing the radiance, right? So you never know. I love how Pink's portal pops out of the panel too. There, I like that.
Yeah, it was really nice to see that they actually got them again for the help. But again, we said like it really shows that it varies. Their approach varies by each issue, by how they feel, what's going on contextually, and everything. So that's really interesting to see how not only are the Radiants best when they're together, or the two Radiant wielders best when they're working together, but also teamwork always makes the dream work, right?
Yeah.
So
That's how Shrek
yeah,
got
and
made. Dreamworks.
this one is great because we get that page where we see again all of them doing like a group absorption. In the bottom here, you can see the three Radiants, pink, red, and black, all absorbing everything. And that's when we see in this timeline. One thing I thought was really funny is pink is absorbing like one of the balls, and she says, and then you can see a radio from red who's asking her, "Want some help? If you can teleport me down." And that's what she says, "Nah, I'm cake," which I've never ever heard anyone say. I just think that's so funny. Nah,
It's
I'm
really
cake.
shui.
Yeah, it's very shui, exactly. Another couple of minutes, and then you see shroom, a teleporting punch, basically, and that's where you see the shift has appeared, and he said something that's I thought so funny because it's like she's gonna get triggered. He says, "Don't take it personally. You're just the weakest." And as he's lunging at her, you hear like an explosion, and that's Radiant Pink going into Pink God mode right here.
What do you think her power sets are? Or
Dude, I have no idea. Maybe she extends her. I have no idea. I don't know.
Maybe it's
She looks like
omnipresence
Scotty Thunder, man.
exists everywhere in every space at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
My immediate thought was it's Kitty Pryde. She's intangible and things can move through her and nothing can hit her. That's why it's like might be futile for him to even go at her. But yeah, I feel like omnipresence is also like that feels like her ability dialed up to me.
And also, I believe this is the first time we've actually seen Shift interacting with Ava, because obviously, of course, we've seen him tangle with both Radiance Black. We've seen him tangle with Satomi in her miniseries. He may have had some kind of encounter with Radiant Yellow during the Rogues Gallery arc, 16-17. But I believe this is the first time that we've seen Shift interacting or meeting with Ava. So it's makes for a really interesting setup that unfortunately we don't get to see in this particular issue. Maybe we might get the fallout of that in 29.5. It's like, man, that was an exhausting fight that we had. It was so cool. I wish everybody could have seen it.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's a great point. And so it was really nice to see that dynamic, even if it was just brief. And hopefully we'll get to see at least more of the fight or the outcome in the next issue. But back to Radiant Black.
I'm wrong because he called her the weakest. So
plus, I want to see what she can do with the God mode. That's such a tease to like end it right there, to be like, "Oh no, God mode, bye. We'll come back later."
Yeah, that is a bit jumpy. We got to get Radiant Red a jetpack though, because she might have got another brunette killed. No, I'm just kidding, but kinda. This was a great ad for a Subaru until it wasn't. We get things that are dialing up, and we learned that Red is better at absorbing the quasars because, I mean, her ability is absorption. It makes sense that she'd be able to handle it the easiest. And things get.
This is important. I have to point this out. I've literally pointed out how not being able to fly as a Radiant is a huge weakness, but Pink is able to like find her navigate her way around it because of teleportation. And like Wendell could just see all the timelines where he fucks up and then like maybe catch the bus at the right time or something. You know, whatever works for him. But like Satomi is just there, man. She cannot do anything, and that to me is just like it's brutal because she literally is ground locked. Like she has to find transportation to be useful. She can't just like go somewhere, which makes it.
She needs to learn how to Hulk jump.
Exactly.
You know, the Hulk jumps like just leaps miles. That's what she needs to learn.
Yeah. Like how could she think when Mr. Burnett comes up here and he's just like, "Oh, I'll just take you." Like how the fuck could they think that's a good idea? And I also do want to say, she says, "Oh, Marshall, need a lift," and then you jump back to. Oh, sorry. She says, "Oh, Marshall," and then she sees the dad, Mr. Burnett, with the car, need a lift. And then you see a panel on the next page with Marshall saying, "What? That's impossible. We left the car right across." And then he says, "Oh," and he sees like 001 just teleporting. So that's like, is 001 not directly responsible for someone getting Mr. Burnett killed if he's the one that teleported the car there? Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, he is, but he's also the one responsible for saving Chicago at that point too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So it was like one life for everyone else.
And he's again kind of assisting Nathan from the shadows.
Yep.
Which again goes back to kind of the amalgamation of theories we had that the champion of his choice would be Nathan. That's who he's trying to have win, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, he shows up, so I guess he like teleported the car. Like he could have probably prevented any deaths, but he did make sure the car got there for this event to happen the way it is. It's really interesting, and I this death was amazing. We got to talk about it. Where Red's driving the car, it shows so much. Like he's driving the car with like the woman that almost like killed his kid, and it's just like this is what's important. What's really important is just like, hey Nathan, remember what I said about shortcuts? Yeah, well, it's not a shortcut to let people who love you help you. Like that gave me chills, that line, and it's just even now just reading it, and just this death was amazing. Like the way that Eva Tomi's trying to absorb it, and the car gets her there like just in time to absorb enough. 35 seconds left, and then we get the white page and the crater, right?
Oh.
And you get the
that's from a different issue. That's later.
On that too, they highlighted how much smaller this one was, because this time we only got one blank page instead of two.
Yeah.
Remember the other issue we had the 2 blank pages?
Good call. Yeah. And it's a small crater that gets just enough of the car to kill Mr. Burnett.
This is right here. This is brutal right here. This is like hard to
It's like 2 seconds closer. 2 seconds quicker, and maybe we could have had the perfect ending where everyone's saved. And even just up above where it's cut off, you see like Marshall and the Red are like, we won, dream team. And it's like, you technically yes, but
at a cost. It came at a cost. You get this brutal ending here, which parallels the Marshall ending from from last month, where Nathan dies, and it's brutal, right? They both got some.
And you know what it is too? This could be his sacrifice, because it seems like this sacrifice that they have to make has to be personal rather than just kind of civilian. So this could be Nathan's sacrifice as opposed to Marshall losing his best friend.
I like that thought. Damn.
So
what an issue.
One thing I wanted to bring up is this is from 25, I believe, right? 25, 25 or 20?
25.
Yeah. So this is the first time that you see Radiant Yellow and Radiant Pink's God mode right here.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can see Radiant Yellow makes. I'm assuming that's his God mode, but he like superpositions or something, so he makes multiple versions of himself, all with their own energy.
It looks Pink just turns into light, I guess. Like I know he's more light based, but Pink just turns into like fast matter. Like she can just travel that fast, I guess, is like the idea.
I have no idea, but it looks just really
straight
cool.
Up energy. I don't know.
Yeah,
the face is almost Cthulhu like.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So and then you see more alien beings who look somewhat similar to the 001 species of people. So maybe these were them when they were getting.
Or like destroyed. A different part of the planet, like how people on Earth look a little bit different depending on the continent.
Yeah. So here, we were talking earlier about where's Radiant Yellow. This is the last time we saw Radiant Yellow. So it's important because we're talking about the new way a lot in the last 2 issues. So 27, 28, and the 0.5. This is a lot of new way discussion. This is important because we've all had our speculations or theories regarding how the timelines are going to converge or something like that. So why is this cool? Because we talked about how, sorry if I'm repeating myself, how Radiant Yellow was benched during this event, and somehow him coming back is going to influence things, especially considering how this is to do with timelines, and he had his own visions about what's happening. But here it's particularly interesting because it's his colossal speaking for him.
Yeah, there
is no new way. Yeah, so it goes back on its word, and it literally takes him out of the picture. Like it literally just sucks him in, and there's no more, like Radiant Yellow is no longer in play. So my thinking is like that has to do with everything, right? Like what's going on there. I'm not entirely sure yet, but there's something happening there as well. And it ties back to the main, like the overarching narrative regarding what's happening with Catalyst, which is this whole like new way versus the old way. So we're going to have to, as a community, come together and figure this out. What is like exactly the new way and the old way? Yeah, we've gotten some crumbs here and there. So let's try to figure this out and see exactly what's happening.
So
like maybe the robots are going to see who wins, right? And like there is no new way, but like they're trying to resist. They don't want Wendell to be impacting it too much because he can see the future, and maybe they want to see how the new guys play out. I don't know, Owen.
So I mentioned off top that I was going to have some ideas and discussions that we
Yeah.
could for this. Now that we've reached the ending of both issues, I want to discuss with you guys, what do you think this, based on what we got so far, what do you think the story of Catalyst War is? And I want to mention this off the bat. To anybody who's ever taken a creative writing class or any type of thing like that, there's a difference between story and plot. Plot is basically like the exact events of what things happen, like A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. Story is more so about like the purpose and what exactly is going on beyond the plot, what is driving the plot, what is causing this plot to move forward. I believe that the story of Catalyst War is, it serves as a character study between Nathan and Marshall, and it showcases what happens when you have two people who've spent their entire lives with each other, and they're put through these. It's basically what happens like when you take these two people and you have them face the exact same trials, and you see how exactly they handle these different ideals and pressure. Like in the second trial, when Marshall and Nathan are faced with the opposition of the 100 and Accretion, Marshall immediately tries to go into a fist fight. He's immediately going out all fists ablazing, trying to be able to take them out. Whereas Nathan is trying to use his linguistic and conversation abilities and persuasion in order to be able to convince the members of the 100 of the new way's validity. And it did at least get to at least one of them, because like she ended up helping him tell him like, listen, like your friend's going to be sacrificed and whatever and so on and so forth. And it also speaks to the nature about the choice of free will, because from what I've gathered, the old way was basically the Radiants would possess the individual, they would possess the vessel, the Colossals would take over, they would all serve the will of basically trying to conquer all these planets, whereas the new way is all about free will. It's about self-expression. It's seeing what happens when those are given these incredible abilities and they're given the opportunities of what they want to do with them. And 1 second, I need to catch my breath because I've been talking so much. But it's for a good reason. And it also speaks to the notion of the choices that we make. How even if they may have the most noble of intentions behind them, the consequences that branch out from these choices are incredibly dire. And obviously, of course, there's the fact of like, and with the recent things that have happened in these past like 4 issues, it also speaks of the notion of loss and how stuff like that can really affect and drive and motivate a person. And how also, and one last other thing is how they deal with failure. Because how many of you guys have seen Star Trek 2?
Oh, of course, Wrath of Khan. Did you read Midlife? Did you read Midlife? Is that why you're bringing that up?
No, because I don't know if you guys remember this, but in the opening of Star Trek 2, there's a Vulcan who is taking a test, and the test is no matter what happens, it's always going to fail. Like, no matter what you do, you are always going to fail. But Kirk ended up somehow managing to get a perfect score and succeed the mission.
The Kobayashi Maru?
Yeah, that's the one. And he was only able to do that by cheating. What if, with these trials, they were never supposed to win? Like, the only way, like, with the way these trials are designated, like, you get the notion that maybe there's a slim chance that they could succeed. But once they begin to get through them, they realize there is no solution. There is no way to succeed. There's only failure. But the only way to actually, quote unquote, succeed is to go outside of the system, go with solutions that may never have been even thought possible. Like, and that may include cheating, because Nathan technically cheated with the trials by taking on the assistance of all the other Radiants, like Satomi and Ava and whatever. So
that's true.
What if this was able to showcase, like, through the assistance and the help of, like, it also kind of speaks, I know it's a bit like Kingdom Heartsy and like, the power of friendship will be able to help us get through. But it is legitimately true. And like, when people legitimately come together and put their minds together, they can solve almost anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop talking now because it was a lot. I hope you guys have had enough time to formulate what your thoughts on what the story of Catalyst War is in my ramblings.
I can do it in one sentence. My sentence is, how do our choices change us and shape us? That's what I think it's been about.
Fair. Yeah. You made a good point, Owen, that I kind of overlooked, where you're talking about Nathan, how he convinced what's her name, George. He convinced
George?
whoever, George. Yeah, he convinced her to flip basically the way,
Or
with the way he was talking.
Jaw,
Yeah. He convinced her to flip with the way he was talking, which I never really considered at the time. It's like the way he said it. I thought it was just that timeline, but I guess like him saying that might have influenced her. So Marshall didn't get saved without it. Maybe it was Marshall's lack of being able to talk to people and communicate, properly, and it's just going full force that prevented any chance of being able to save Nathan in that timeline. So yeah, I was wrong there, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I think that's kind of an interesting layer too. That Nathan, as a Radiant Black, using those skills, Nathan kind of is more Marshall's more business minded, but Nathan is friendlier and kind of like collaborate easier than Marshall, because Marshall has all these ideas but no collaborators. Anyways,
and also this ties a little bit into like that opening flashback of Catalyst War in issue 25, where it's Nathan and Marshall in high school, and Nathan is talking about his teacher's like, this was supposed to be a poetry assignment, and you somehow managed to write an entire one-page short story with a fully resolved B plot with no punctuation. Like, that's egregious.
Yeah.
And it's like you see like he's thoroughly able to plan out all these things, and he's like, oh, I work better alone when it's like a group project. And then immediately you see like Marshall is being harassed by this other dude. He goes into his locker, he grabs a glass bottle, and then proceeds to just smash it over the guy's head.
Yeah.
And like legitimately, we're like, I remember because I'm subscribed to Scott Snyder's like Best Jacket newsletter. He did a really cool comic class where it's like you usually boil down what the story of something is about within like either the first sentence or like the first page of a story. And I believe that opening flashback right there is meant to encapsulate everything that you need to know about Catalyst.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sure.
Also, like Nathan's better at like working with others. He likes to do stuff by himself, but like he grew up with a family that worked together, so he knows what it's like to work with others and stuff like that. Like as he sees the family unit work, whereas all we've seen is Marshall's mom, who's like, dogs cost money. I'm not even really happy to see you, So there's a bigger element to that where Nathan Marshall's upbringing, like he doesn't really know how to work with people that well because he didn't have good influences growing up.
And I think Nathan, like Marshall, has the desire to help people, and I think that's what makes him such an interesting character. Like you see, in his own way, at the video store, he's trying to get customers to watch good shit, and I'm sure Owen, as someone who appreciates movies and watches a lot of them, you can understand that. Like, there's a lot of crap movies. Sometimes customers come at you and they have no understanding of that, right? Of the artistry or craft that goes into it, and they're just like, "Give me a fucking flick." And you're just like, okay, but like instead of another flick, why don't you watch this thing? And it's like that's the kind of Marshall I think that makes him really.
It's the pearls before swine kind of thing. Like with you want to appreciate it. I know the good. You'll appreciate whatever. Yeah,
I'm not interested in this Kira Kurosawa or whoever that is. I just want to watch the latest Fast and Furious.
If I had to answer your question about what the story is, I do think the story has a lot to do with change and like the cost of change and what actual change looks like. If like these characters are kind of stagnant, if you have the ability to change like the cost of actually changing things, right? Of like making a difference in your life, moving to LA or staying here, and like and an opportunity and the opportunity cost as well. Like what can an opportunity really cost? You can save everything, but are you really willing to meet the task that is presented to you? Yeah, that's my thought. It's a loaded question. It's a powerhouse question. That's looking like jackass. It's on the Radiant Black podcast.
I told you I came prepared.
I know you always do.
I thought about it a lot. That's why I did it in one sentence. I was like, I don't want to go too long. I think it'll change, but I think it's something that we will all revisit more earnestly and more with more like care and detail post Catalyst War when we
know what this book is.
When we finally know what this book is. But that's a great question though.
Yeah, both issues had an ad for the Kickstarter for the MassiveVerse fighting card game, which looks freaking sweet. I know Ali, I'm pretty sure Ali's backed it. I know Bash, you have, right? Yeah, both you guys have. Owen and I are waiting for payday, an honorable and equally as honorable. No, but it looks dope. It looks amazing. We get an ad at the back. I have to say,
is everyone here getting the playmat one? I feel like we're all.
I got the playmat. Yeah,
that's the second highest tier.
That's the second highest one. Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be able to get the playmat.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll bring Dex over. I don't think Rest was the best advertisement for Dead Lucky or the card game here. We have 3 cards in the ad. It's just like Teleport / Dragon Blast, Rest. Like Snorlax is the only one that can really pull that off. And
then
there's
sometimes
dead
after
lucky
a
there's
long battle, you just need a nice relaxation.
it's true.
Yeah,
Self-care
exactly.
Sundays are great.
She
but in a
always
card
passes
game-
out after releasing a lot of energy. I just realized
Yeah.
that again. Yeah, she always
Yeah.
faints. Yeah.
I mean, fair. I mean, it's a lot to carry those burns, but yeah, and that's just it's a dig. Obviously, I'm gonna buy the game, and I was even like joking with the Solis Studios Games Twitter because he said, "Oh, our boy Rogue Son deck, or who likes our boy Rogue Son?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't know Marcus was running the Twitter here," but
Yeah, Marcus wouldn't care nearly that much.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
check out that if you haven't already. If you're still listening to the time of this podcast, I think there's like, I don't know, like a month. Get on that. The stretch goals look sweet. So I'm selfishly promoting this because I want more stuff added to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out. And Pocket Paragons looks like a pretty sweet thing. I like it that they use other IPs and you could play them against each other. So you do like Rivals of
Yeah.
Aether versus this. So that's really cool.
Also, the
Yeah.
MassiveVerse card game also has original MassiveVerse art by Dan Mora. I mean,
Mhm.
Dan Mora artwork. What more
sells
could
it
you
11.
need?
Exactly.
Don't you mean what Mora could you need? But
Touche.
yeah. Yeah, Dan the Man Mora. I mean that's alone a good reason to buy it. You guys said everything. You covered all the bases there. Damn right, I already put in my backing for the Kickstarter. Very excited for the card game. Excited to give it a chance with everyone here. I'm sure we'll find some way to play it online. We'll make it work. I actually have some really cool games. Maybe I'll announce it. So I'll announce something. Yeah, we'll bring up the patrons. Good call. So I've been thinking about other ways to implement more Radiant Black games, and obviously I'm not any dungeon master of any kind or some kind of guy who can just craft an entire game out of scratch. But I was thinking about common games that you can just add a Radiant Black theme to, like Risk or like things like that. And I actually found a way to make it work. So we're gonna do that in the future. I'm very excited because it's gonna be so stupid.
That'll be a
It's
long
gonna-
ass live stream. Risk games take a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah, or what's the game where you have to guess? Like you all have like the things, and you have
Guess
to
who?
guess. Yeah,
Guess
guess who? Yeah. So guess who? Another one. That's another one that I think works really well with Radiant Black, where it's just like we're gonna do that. So a few
That'd be
things
fun.
like that. We might do in the future. I'm excited. I'm putting that together.
But if you see Radiant Black, like which one do you get? If you say which way you
Exactly, that's you got to be careful with them
Ooh.
questions,
I got
baby.
lost.
No, that's cool.
So,
yeah. I was gonna say, like, I was rethinking like my choice with this. Obviously, like I think it'd be hard not to if you're a Marshall voter and watching like, whoa, okay, I know Nathan died in the Marshall timeline, which isn't good. My vote died in the Marshall pick. I even voted for Marshall, but like Nathan seems to be getting his shit together. He lost his dad, but it seems like this is the winning timeline to me, the 0.5 right now. But we'll see, right? You can never be sure with Kyle. So I just wanted to put that there. Also, I want to say that Joe Clark's been killing it. I feel like I haven't mentioned his name too much, and he's definitely like carrying his weight here. And, he's been an asset to the series too. So shout out to Joe Clark.
Yeah. And if I also remember correctly,
they're the
Deep
ordinary guys working
Cuts
on ordinary
also-
gods. Yeah, they are. They did it together, and Deep Cuts just came out. I'm glad you brought that up. 1 second.
What were you saying, Owen?
Yeah, because I completely forgot that Joe also worked on Ordinary Gods with Kyle. And that was a really great series. Shame it only lasted 10 issues because I could have easily seen that going for like what.
It was deep. It was pretty clever.
Yeah, like I think the best way to describe it, like off the top of my head, was like Highlander meets Matrix, where it's about a bunch of immortals being constantly reincarnated in all these past lives. Like,
Yeah.
I think it could have been a really cool idea that could have gone far. It definitely is something that has like adaptation potential.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I just wish we could have gotten to see more of the comic. But
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
You never know, right?
So I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. I'm glad you got it because I was like, I did buy this today, and yeah, the book is a masterpiece. I think it'll be nominated. I mean, look, Juniba did the artwork on this issue, so if you look inside, there's wonderful, just gorgeous Juniba artwork. This story is incredible. Guys, I read a lot of comic books, a lot of comic books. This is up there with some of the best work in the last year. I think critically, this is probably Kyle's best work. I would say so with Radiant Black, but I think this one You just have to read it. It's really special. It really is. It's a special work. You can tell that Joe Clark and Kyle are putting their heart and soul into this. They're really like, there's something beautiful about this book. It's deep. It's raw. It's emotional. It's an anthology series, so you can literally pick up any issue and you'll be fine. Yeah, you don't need to follow every issue, but the covers do connect if you're able to track them down. It's $6 for every issue, but it's a thick square bound style book, so it's like super massive.
Extra dollars carrying a lot.
Yes, it really does. So I'm glad Owen brought this up because deep cuts, guys. If you're not buying this, I highly recommend either checking out when the trade comes or just giving it a shot. It's so good. And if you like Kyle Higgins or Joe Clark or both, you will not be disappointed.
And also the colors by Igor Monti are absolutely
oh my
showstopping.
God. Like that's how I knew he was there. I already knew he was elite, but like with any artist, whether you're inks or colors or whatever have you, it's easy to stay in your comfort zone. It's easy. It's really easy to be like, this is what I do well, and I'm going to do it all the time. It's really hard for an artist to be thrown into something they've never evolve and do something completely different from what they've done. And the color palette in this book is a huge evolution in Igor Monti's in his progress as an artist. Like you can see he's really putting himself out there and he's trying something completely different. There's no comfort zone for him. He's completely going outside his comfort zone, trying new things. And for me as a reader, I love that. I really do. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because it's like, I don't want to see the same shit. I want to see you really take a risk and do something which you think is so cool. Yeah, big swings. And this book does it. The art, the colors are just seriously one of the best colored books on shelves.
Comics Nation wishes we could do an ad like that.
Yeah, another honorable mention, not MassiveVerse, but I know Owen will appreciate the Duke.
Tom Riley. Yeah, I think I'm actually in the letters column for that issue.
Oh, sweet.
Awesome!
I haven't read it yet. I'm gonna read it right after. But
nice.
Tom Riley, I read 1 and 2. Tom Riley is killing. I love Tom Riley. He's one of my favorite artists working right now. He's very good. He even reminds me a little bit of Chris Somney, but of course he's doing his own thing. And then Josh Williamson, another one of my favorites. And then of course Jordi Belair on colors. Like the team on this book is elite, and it's such a great book. Energon is going hard. So
nice.
Before we wrap up here.
Quickly, I just want to say, I love Marshall throwing the fireballs, going, "Hey, you soulless bitches, you merciless fucks! I've got the third door for you." Like the dialogue, like we undersold the dialogue. Marshall is going off. He's going like full Venom. Like he's getting pissed.
Now the question is, did Kyle write that or did Joe Clark write that?
That's interesting. I want to say, because even last issue 27, he calls him a soulless fuck. Like the person who kills Nathan. Like his immediate reaction is like, you killed him, you soulless fuck. Yeah, he's like, can't believe it. And it's so cool because it's like the half face is morphed, but you can still see his mouth because it hasn't fully covered his face yet, the helmet.
He's got that like Sarah Connor hate on robots now that you see. Like that's the kind of hate that he's got for the bots now. And we know that there is no fourth door because it would presumably be on that Subaru that is now destroyed. Rest in peace. But what were you gonna say, Bash?
I was gonna say Radiant Black Volume 5 is out. Depending on, it says it's out now, so it should be out now, but depending on your comic book store, some of them might get it next week. Make sure you go and pick up Radiant Black Volume 5. That covers the first half of Catalyst War, which I believe is 25, 25.5, 26, 26.5, 27, 27.5. So if you want to read up on the Catalyst War, if you want to add your the new recent trade to your collection of trades, make sure you pick it up. It just came out, has a gorgeous cover, in keeping with the spirit and theme of all the previous trade covers, and this one has a bunch of robots and Premiere on it and everything. It looks amazing. And last but not least, we want to thank Owen for joining us today. It's always a good time. Who knows? Maybe we'll get him back in the future. We've said before, we're always open to having guests on. If you want to be on, please just send us a message and ask. That's exactly what Owen did, and we were super happy to have him on. I think someone else asked to be on 29. But with Rogue Sun and all that, the stuff was open. So we're always going to get together in the future. We always have a good time. And like I said, we have some events coming up, like Risk or Guess Who, things like that we're trying to put together with a Radiant or a MassiveVerse spin to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, I promise. So keep an eye out for those. And last but not least, we want to thank, I'm sorry if I'm going to shift the screens here a bit. I want to thank our patrons, Noah M, Patrick, Joe J, and Jordan C. We actually recently got another patron, so I have to update this. I got the email like 2 days ago. That was such a surprise. I'm not gonna lie. So that was so fun, and really, it makes us feel good. We really appreciate everyone helping us keep the lights on and improve the show. We haven't added anything massive or super massive to the Patreon in a minute. We are putting together the next newsletter. That's a work in progress. We're gonna do that. It's because we have a really big video idea, which we're not going to reveal. I don't want anyone to do it before we do.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Cool
we have a big video idea. Yeah, we have a big video idea where we're working on like right now, and it's going to come soon, very soon. And then after that, we're going to put together the newsletter, and we're going to keep on demoing, putting things earlier for our patrons. We did that with the How Long Will Radiant Black Be? That episode felt dated because we dropped it like a month or two prior on our Patreon before just deciding to put it public. But yeah, thank you so much to our patrons. We really appreciate you. And of course, back to our friend Owen. Thank you so much, Owen, for joining us. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He does incredible work. He's just a good, honest comic book fan, collects a lot of cool comics, and does a lot of talks about the MassiveVerse a ton with his MassiveVerse Central account. Make sure you follow him there. And just generally a fun guy to talk to about comic books. So highly consider him a friend of the show. Yeah, of course, Owen. Always lovely to have you joining us. And guys, you guys know it's the Catalyst War. Things are getting crazy. We've got 4 more chapters of the Catalyst War, but 2 more issues, 2 more, really 4, right? Because it's the halves. So make sure you get your pre-orders in. Rogue Sun will return in May, so fret not, followers of the Rogue Sun book. And thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Make sure you find a way to qualify for the third door, and we'll see you next time. Stay radiant.